Susan, it has been mission impossible us trying to have this conversation. We met each other in a mastermind that we're in together, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cool, and I love what she's doing. And then we tried to make it happen, and it's just been mission impossible. So I'm so thrilled that we could make this conversation happen today. And I'm so excited for people to hear who you are and what you do. So let's start with a kind of maybe curveball question for you. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
This question. Oh, what a great way to start the interview. And I just want to say thank you so much for having me on, Sandra. It's such a joy to be having this conversation with you. So what I wanted to be when I grew up, I cycled through a whole lot of things, but I think the main thing was an actress. Yeah. And I wasn't one of these people that was like, I'd do it for the craft and, like I could just do away with all the fame. I was like, no, I want all the fame.
I want to be famous.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
And so what happened? Because I know spoiler alert, you're not at least not in terms of what you do all day, every day. You're not an actress. So how did you end up not going the acting route? What did you end up doing and why?
Yeah, well, I ended up not going the acting route because I'm actually not that great at acting. So it was more about the fame, I think. But I am really, really, really good with words. I've always been an absolutely avid reader. I remember reading storybooks as a child and I would always change them, change the characters, change the endings, just make up my own stories and just write and write and write. But I didn't know you could make money. I knew that you could write books or be an author, but I didn't know that there was going to be this, whole digital world where I could write for a living. So I guess I fell into it a little bit. I did a degree in English literature and loved that and just always kind of followed my passion and, took a few alternative paths along the way, but found myself here.
And so what is it that you do for anybody who's listening, watching, yes, who doesn't know who you are? What do you do and why do you do it?
Yeah, for sure. I'm something called a UX copywriter. So I think a lot of people in your audience might be familiar with a copywriter. They're the people that write the words on websites and sales pages and emails. Generally to bring in money into a business. But the UX part of it, I actually started as something called a UX writer, and it's a bit different to a UX copywriter because it's about optimizing user journeys in a digital product like an app. So you're not really selling something. Someone's already downloaded the app or, have decided to use an e-commerce platform to do the job that they're trying to do. And you optimize that by tweaking little bits of microcopy and looking at the user journey and filling any gaps. And so I guess UX copywriting is marrying the two together. So it's about optimizing a marketing, website or sales page sequence and just looking at the whole user journey and making sure that the words that we write are really speaking in their language, are really helping them do what they want to get done. And then that has the knock-on effect of, a positive business outcome as well. So it's really finding that win-win.
What do you love about what you do? Because that's one of the things that's always struck me is your passion for what you do. You're so passionate about it. What is it that you love about what you do?
Yeah, I think it's because I get to do two things that I love, which is the writing part of it, but also connecting with people. So it's not just sitting there and writing in isolation. It's, constantly talking to people, showing them the copy, seeing what they think of it or what they make of it, tweaking, interacting. It's just a huge, juicy, interesting conversation and getting into the heads of people and trying to figure out, what they're trying to do and their motivations. I just find all of that just so fascinating. And when it all comes together, you're solving a really complex problem and you're solving it for multiple people too. You're solving it for the end user and you're also solving it for the business. And I just like that. I like that challenge. I just think it's so exciting.
One of the things that I love about what people like you do is being able to weave or to tell a story through the power of words. Like, what are some of the things when somebody's looking at a website, like a really well-designed website, what are some of the elements that you're like, these are absolute must-haves for you to have on a well-written, from a UX perspective, website?
Yeah, I think the real must-have there is something that you often can't see, and it's called the user journey. And it's just really thinking about being conscious about how someone is going to move through that website and what they're going to see at each stage, and just sort of slowly unraveling the story rather than overloading them, initially with all the information. Just, as they go, giving them what they need. And like I said, it's not really something that you can see when you look on the page, but if you have a really great experience on a website, you often won't even know that this is what is happening, because it all just feels so intuitive and you just know what to do. Well, someone's probably, mapped that all out for you.
So you said about how even as a kid, you love to read, you love to make up your own versions of the story. What was it about words and reading that so pulled you in?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think as a child, it was probably the potential to transport, myself to anywhere with words, and the power that they have to completely, engross you. And I think that is probably still what is at the core of it. I've never really thought about it, to be honest, Sandra. So I'm just going off the cuff here a little bit. But I think I'm fascinated by the idea that you can use how powerful the right words are and how powerful the wrong words are, and that by just changing your words, you can change, a path of action for someone. So they're very powerful things. And, with that comes great responsibility, which I find really interesting as well. Just using our powers for good is a conversation that's, coming up more and more as well. And that's something that I find really interesting. But yeah, I think it's the power of them. And I think it's also just a way that I find easy to communicate. And I'm so intrigued, and I love conversations like this with you. I love an exchange of ideas. I love learning, and words are just, a tool or a facilitator for that.
What are some of the biggest challenges that people when you typically are working with people, what are some of their biggest challenges in terms of getting maybe the idea or the thought about what their business is or the problem that they solve onto paper? How do you walk them through that process?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge a lot of business owners have, because I'm a business owner, so I have this challenge myself, is that we're inside the bottle, so we can't read the label. I don't know who came up with that, but it's so good. So I can't attribute that to anyone, unfortunately. But it's just often, we see our businesses as we see them. We see all the back end and how the process works and all that. And it can be hard to step outside of that and get into the mind of users and start thinking, okay, what is it that they're trying to do? What is their motivation? And often that will be quite different to our motivation. So making sure that you're speaking to them and not so much speaking this is what I want to tell you. So
what I'm hearing you say is that a lot of the time we're so in the weeds of our business that it's hard for us to kind of come up and see and there's another expression that we hear all the time, the 10,000-foot version of here's what my customer, because your customer has no idea about the nitty gritty. So it's really being able to tell that bigger stories. Is that kind of sort of a good summation of what it is that is challenging for them?
Yeah. And I think even just little things like not writing from I and we all the time, and talking in the second person, talking about you and what you want to do, that can be really hard, not to just sort of broadcast our message out, because as business owners, we're so excited about it. But as a customer on the other side, we're excited about what we want and what we want to do. So that's the message that, usually we want to see.
So you do this for a living, and I know you're also balancing being a mom. You have young children. How do you do it? What's been the hardest thing between owning your own business, and was this always your aspiration to be an entrepreneur?
I think it was, but I didn't know it. So I had always sort of wanted to do it, but didn't know that it was possible for me in some way. I just didn't think I could. And it was actually, I had twin daughters. I have, and they're 4 now. And when they were born and I looked at childcare costs, I was just like, I don't know how I can do this. And the only way I could think I could do this was to work for myself and have the flexibility. And thank goodness I did, because they've actually, and, you know, I'm sure this is a common story for a lot of mums with businesses, but, you know, they get sick all the time. And especially with COVID, you know, like you've got to immediately take them out of school and be at home with them. So we've just needed that next level of flexibility. And I think, to be honest, the sickness has been the biggest challenge. You know, you'll have a whole day planned and then it's like, whoop, no, that day's gone. Well, not gone, but, you know, like that day in business is gone. You know, how can I reorganize this? And, you know, sometimes that means working nights. Sometimes that means, you know, not always doing absolutely everything that you want to do. And I think that can be frustrating because I'm 3 years in and things are really starting to gain momentum. So it's, you know, hard to sometimes pull back from that, but it's an important thing to do too.
What was it that made you doubt or think that you couldn't be an entrepreneur before?
Yeah, I think maybe just like no one in my family had done it. So I hadn't really seen what it looked like. So it seemed like something that other people did, but not like I didn't know like the practical steps that you took to do that. But yeah, I had a conversation. I remember having a conversation with a really good friend of mine in Japan. Actually, it really stands out to me because of where we were. And he just sort of said, you know, you can do it. You just, you know, and he was just like, and it's the right thing. He said it completely unequivocally, which can sometimes really help. He was just like, it's the right thing for you. You can do it. You should do it. And it was that moment then that I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is a possibility for me.
What's been so far, 3 years in with the business doing really well, what's been the most challenging thing for you?
I think there's a couple of things that I could point to. I think I started my own group program last year, UX to Profit. And again, that was an idea that I'd had for years, but somehow couldn't get it off the ground. So just making that decision and committing to it and selling it and making it, that was sort of like there were hurdles all along the way there. But I think that also ties into the bigger underlying challenge, which has just been mindset, which really surprises me because I don't consider myself a real you know, as the lovely Laura Belgray, who we both know, would say, like, I would call myself woo adjacent. So like, I'm not full woo, but I'm a little bit woo. But yeah, like it really surprised me. Like, I feel like it's 50% mindset. I tell people that all the time. Just believing in yourself.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that so interesting? Because I think that a lot of the time we think that, oh, it's about I need a strategy or I need a mastermind or I need a coach. But really, most of it is exactly as you said, mindset. And what would you say has been for you the big shift or the mindset shift that you've had to make in stepping into this role as owning the fact that you are a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it's been believing in myself. And I'm trying to think how, like, a more practical, tangible way to describe that, but really stepping into my role as a leader and, you know, seeing fully what I have to offer people and that it is of value.
You're so right that for so many women, and I think it's especially for women, that it's very hard for us to believe in ourselves. So what's been the biggest tool? What's been the biggest thing that you've leaned on to help you step into that belief?
Yeah, I do think that I'm really fortunate with the family and the upbringing that I have had, because I was always instilled with this idea that I was great and I could do lots of stuff, which was really, really lovely. And I think important to acknowledge, because I think not everyone has that. But I think the other thing has been surrounding myself with people like you, Sandra, and just like other entrepreneurs that are doing amazing things and feeling on par as equal with those people. Do you know what I mean? And really putting myself in circles where I can showcase my skills and just consistent action. Just, saying yes to this podcast, things like that, even though inside the little part of me goes, oh, it's scary. But just, going, no, I can just repeating to myself, I can do hard things and, getting to the other side. And the more hard things you do and the more you push yourself, well, I'm saying this for me anyway, this is what I've found to be true, the more evidence that you have that you can. So it sort of builds on itself.
It's so true. I actually studied under a mentor of mine. His name is BJ Fogg, and he studied behavior for like 25 years. He's the head of the Behavior Research Institute at Stanford. And he was telling me that there's a term for it, which is called success motivation, that the more you do something, then the more likely you are to do it again. And so with that said, since you are successful and you're building this business, I've just watched you in the short time that we've known each other, just take bold step after bold step after bold step. And what I'd love to know from you is, what is your big dream? So when you kind of dream 3 years, 5 years from now, what's the dream that you have for what this business will be?
Oh, that's a great question. I have to make a confession that I'm not that much of a planner. I think my strategy is just like, okay, what's the next big, bold thing I can do? And then let's see where that takes me. So I haven't really thought about it, but I would like to take a moment to reflect on it now. Because I think what I'm sort of moving a little bit towards is I really believe in UX copywriting and it being not even the future, but the present day, what we're operating in. And I would like, almost a school or like something. At the moment, I'm very much Susan Reoch copywriter, and I have my programs and I have my client consulting side of the business as well. But I'd really like to develop maybe a business that's a bit more separate from me, and that pulls in the genius of other people working in the field as well. So I think that would probably be my dream.
So if we talk about what you see out there in terms of UX, what are some of the things that make you cringe that you see people doing, websites doing, copy? What are the things that make you cringe?
I think actually I saw this yesterday, and it did. I often find it hard to say these things because there's always a context. Do you know what I mean? And if I say this thing, someone will go, oh, but that works really well here. And I'm like, oh, I know. But generally, I think actually really long labels in a navigation. I saw one yesterday that was like a whole sentence in the navigation. I was like, it's meant to be like one word. What are you doing? It's like the whole thing. So that's one thing I think. And I think also, links in the text, like not buttons, but links in the text that say click here or something, really just for accessibility. Like it should really make it clear. The whole link copy should be clear what's going to happen when you click on that link.
That's one that I see all the time, like in emails. I see that a lot of the time, click here. So that's a great point. So when you're designing, I'm guessing you're thinking about not just where it's, you're seeing it in the app, but you're also thinking about the user experience. And like, as you rightly say, for most of us, we're not thinking about, oh, there are people with different abilities who are going to need to see this. So what are some of the tips that you might give someone who's designing an app, maybe, about what are key things for them to think about to make it accessible?
Yeah, well, I just think because I'm really the words part of it rather than the design, but thinking about the making things in plain language, keeping things really simple and really clear. Like it's a bit of an obvious one, but I do think it gets overlooked. And things like, just making sure that the links are really clear for anyone on screen reader, making sure that there's alternative descriptions for images so that, someone who can't see the page for whatever reason still gets the full experience of the website with all the beautiful images that you've, taken care to design. Like you want people to be able to experience that.
So you talked about the fact that growing up, you obviously didn't have anybody, which for a lot of people didn't have somebody in their family who was an entrepreneur. I'm actually always surprised at the number of entrepreneurs, because I think when you're in entrepreneurship, it feels like, oh, everybody's an entrepreneur, but it's not a huge number. And so what does your family think now of you being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think they think it's really cool, but I'm not sure they're entirely sure what I do. But my mum is my biggest fan. She gets all my emails and she writes back to them, and she especially likes it when she gets a mention. So I think they're super proud of me. And but it's a very different experience.
Yeah, I would imagine. So, it's so funny. I just remembered something my daughter used to say, actually. So I've been an entrepreneur since 2006. So she was still quite little when I started down this journey. And so she would tell people, like people would say, well, what does your mom do? And she'd explain as, well, I don't know what my mom does now, but she used to have a proper job. Like what I love that. Proper job. She used to have a proper job. But now the funny thing is she's an entrepreneur, so go figure. What would you want for your little girls? Because they're 4, they're at that age where they're just delightful and rascals at the same time. What's your dream for them, and what do you want them to learn from seeing you and what you're doing?
Yeah, my focus has always been for them. I just want them to be happy, which sounds like, okay, so obvious, such a parent thing to say, I guess. But what I mean by that is I don't want them to feel the pressure to achieve a certain grade or to go into a certain profession if it's not what is going to be fulfilling for them. And I think, that's something I've learned along the journey, that for me, just following my heart has led me to, great joy and fulfillment in my career. And I just think it's so sad when people don't have that possibility. And I know that's a very privileged thing to say too. I want to acknowledge my privilege because I am a privileged person. But yeah, for my girls, I definitely want them just to follow their hearts. And if that is to be a hairdresser or a figure skater or a doctor, or an entrepreneur, whatever it is that is truly in their hearts, I want to be able to facilitate that for them.
So for you, it was becoming an entrepreneur was something that, as you said, you had somebody who had that conversation with you and encouraged you. What would you say to somebody who's listening, who's thinking, should I, shouldn't I? I'm not sure. What would the advice be that you would give to somebody who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur?
Just to try it, to give it a go, just to see what's possible. And that doesn't mean, that doesn't have to mean taking the biggest, boldest step like I did. That's just who I am. But explore it, talk to someone, reach out to people that there's power if you get emails from people that you admire, if you're on someone's email list, reply to them, ask them a question, really try to have those conversations that I was fortunate to have.
Who are some of the people that now you admire, that you look up to, who inspire you?
So you, Sandra, I was saying to my husband this morning when he was asking what this podcast was on, I was like, I just look at Sandra and she is an inspiration to me. So you, Laura Belgray, I've mentioned before. I just think she's absolutely amazing. There's an Australian copywriter called Kirsty Fanton, and I did her course I think last year or the year before, I can't even remember, but she is just so smart and funny and down to earth. And I just love the way that she seems to run. I mean, I'm from the outside, but I just think that she is doing amazing stuff. And she actually has a really good biz bestie called Amy Posner, who I also think is really inspiring. So I just think I'm so lucky in my industry. I could literally list every copywriter I know because I think they're all just doing such amazing things.
And so outside of your work, who are you?
Yeah.
What are the things that you love outside of work?
Oh, I like so many things. I love dancing. So we're going to go back. My husband is Dutch, and we're going to go back to Amsterdam very shortly, as long as everything all goes to plan, and finally get to see our families again after a very long time. And they have wonderful music festivals. So we're going to go to a music festival and go dancing, which I'm so excited about. And I'm just a big, and this is an Australian word, but I'm just a big dag, Sandra. Like, I like just kicking around in comfy clothes and going to the beach, and I love painting and just listening to music, and I don't know, just so many things. Oh, and running. I'm a big runner.
What is it about running that you love?
How much you can see in a short amount of time. It's like an efficiency thing.
Go fast and see a lot of things while I'm running.
I always had to, we grew up in this really beautiful natural part of Australia called the Blue Mountains. And every weekend, me and my family would go for walks, and I found them so boring. And then when I was an adult, I was like, hey, I could just run and not be bored.
That has to be the best answer I've ever heard for a reason for running, because I can just see more stuff. You're the best. That's so hilarious. You literally made me laugh. And so for you, okay, so outside of work, I know I asked you about what's the big vision, 3-5 years. Outside of work, what's your big dream for yourself?
To be back traveling, because we haven't been able to do that for a really long time. And it's something me and my husband have always done a lot of. We've seen a lot of the world. We're very, very fortunate. And I would really love my business to be in a place that supported, regular trips overseas.
You've traveled a lot. What are some of the places, like if you had to say right now, and maybe this is an unfair question, what are top 3 destinations that you've ever been to?
Oh my goodness, this is so hard. Okay. All right. Well, I'm not going to say I consider my homes as Australia and Amsterdam. So they're obviously my all-time faves, but I'll put them aside. And I will say Guatemala just blew my mind. We did a 3-day hike from, I've forgotten the name of the village, but to Lago Atitlan, I think it's called. And it was just life-changing. I feel like my life was before that hike and after that hike.
What was it? That sounds like, I'm like, it's a hike. Like, what was it that happened, or what was it that you experienced that made it life-changing?
I think it was just, when you're in a group of just amazing people, like it just seemed we were from all over the world, and we all there was no more than 2 people in each group, and there were about 20 of us. So, 10 different sets of people, all different ages, from all different places, all come to this, incredibly beautiful and exciting place. And then we walked carrying, 20 kilos of luggage on our backs, all our food, all our water, all this stuff. And we just had those there was no chit chat. It was straight into the deep, the kind of conversation that we're having now, Sandra, and the kind of conversation that I love to have. What are your motivations? What drives you? Like all the deep, meaningful stuff. And we all came out of there I know so much about these people. I have no idea where they are in the world now, but I still have such fond memories of all of them. Wow. So that was amazing. There's a little island off the coast of Australia called Lord Howe Island, and it's tiny and it's so far away from anything, and it is like a natural paradise, and that's probably the most beautiful place I've ever been. And then Italy for everything, for the culture, for the food, for everything everyone loves about Italy. I have that passion too. It's just such a special place.
And what's one place that's on your dream list that you haven't been to yet?
Nepal.
Why Nepal?
So I used to have a pen friend back when people had pen friends. My school organized that I would write to someone.
Friend. Her name was Jennifer. She's in Northern Ireland.
That's so good. Well, my pen friend was in Nepal, and we shared just the most beautiful letters for the year or however long it was. And it just, it just seems like such a beautiful country, and I would just love to see it.
Yeah. And how has travel changed for you, especially now that you have little ones? And I guess we've probably been locked down, so never mind. It's changed for you because I didn't do any.
Exactly. The last trip I did was with my girls when they were 6 months old. We flew back to Amsterdam. That was the last trip I think I've done. But I have been really fortunate. I live in a really beautiful place on the south coast of New South Wales, which is just about 2 hours down from Sydney in Australia. Mm-hmm. And our state, New South Wales, is beautiful. There are so many gorgeous beaches, beautiful nature, wildlife. So we've just been doing lots of local exploration, which has been really lovely, actually, and much more chilled.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I haven't traveled at all for ever. It feels like forever, which is so fascinating for me because I used to literally be on an airplane every week. So I literally was I think I've forgotten how to do travel. But
you'll remember.
And what are you most excited? You said you're excited about the trip to Amsterdam. What else are you excited for 2022?
What else? This has been on our this has felt like an endpoint for a really long time because it's kept getting delayed and postponed for so long that I almost can't see beyond it. I just feel like I need to get there, all my eggs are in that basket. So let's hope I make it. And then I think that's what I'm actually looking forward to because I haven't had a really proper break from my business and from work for years now, because of COVID. My work became the Band-Aid or the thing that I could focus on and the thing that I could, in a way, control when everything else felt so uncontrollable. And I think it's going to be really, really good for me just to step away with no plans for when I come back and then just let it all settle, let the ground rest, and then come back. And I have belief that I've done enough. I've done a lot in the last few years. I've done enough. I can have a break and then I can come back and do it all again.
All over again. What's the impact that you want to have in the world with the work that you do?
Yeah, I think I want to, it's both. It's helping businesses, grow and, do communicate their value in the world. But it's also helping the people on the other side of the screen, make a decision and access the things that they need to access easily. And that's not always, buying something or figuring out if something is the right fit for them, but just being able to what excites me about UX is, helping someone, I don't know, do their banking with ease and not have to pick up the phone and not get frustrated or check in online, or just do any of those things. The internet is such a established part of our lives now. So it's just around creating, I love the idea of just making things easy for people, of removing the frustrations, of facilitating these amazing conversations and for connecting people.
That's one of the things that literally blows my mind is, with all of the things that we complain about the internet, and yes, it can be intrusive. And yes, now, we're literally tethered to our phones all the time. But it really is exactly what we're doing right now is just, you're half a world away and we can have a conversation and I can get to know you even though we've never met in real life. So this is such a beautiful thing. And I want to ask you one last question because I know that you're someone who understands the power of words. And I'd love for you to finish this sentence for me. I am
strong.
I love that. And why do you say I am strong? Why was that the first thing that popped into your mind?
Well, the first thing that popped into my mind, because I'm talking to you, was worthy.
If I had a dollar, really, if I had a dollar for everybody who says I am worthy, and I'm no, I feel like saying you can say any word except worthy.
Except for worthy. But that just shows what a strong brand you have built, Sandra, that people are looking at you literally just going, worthy, worthy, worthy. That is amazing. I think congratulations on that. And so my second one was strong, because I feel like over the past 3 to 4 years, I think I've always been a strong person, but I've really come to acknowledge that and be proud of that strength as well.
You know, one of my favorite quotes, all-time favorite quotes, is from The Wizard of Oz. And the Good Witch says to Dorothy, "You've always had the power." Like that. You've always had the power. And then she carries on to say, "But you had to learn it for yourself."
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And how true is that? Because anyone can tell you it, but it really has to come from within, doesn't it?
Yeah. What are you most proud of that you've achieved so far?
So it's having my girls, because that was a very long journey for us, with a lot of heartache. But yeah, I couldn't be prouder of me and my husband and how we navigated that together, and how strong our family is, and how much we all support each other. I have so much support, and I support all of them. And yeah, it's just, I feel so lucky to have the family I have.
I feel so lucky to know you, Susan. I feel so lucky to call you a friend. And I'd love for you to share where people can find more about you, where they can be so lucky to get to know more about you and what you do, and if they want to get in contact with you to work with you.
Yeah, for sure. So they can come check out my website, which is susanreochcopywriter.com. And Reoch is spelled Reoch. Bit of a strange last name, unusual last name. And my Instagram handle, come and definitely check me out on Instagram. It's SusanReoch_copywriter, and pop into my DMs and I'll send you a voice note. I love voice notes. So that's probably the most immediate way to get in contact with me.
You and me both. I love voice notes. I really do. I think it's when people take the time. I'll tell you a real quick story. I had this guy who I literally saved it. He reached out to me. He's in Denmark or somewhere like that. And he plays piano for events, but virtually. So over Zoom, so you can hire him and he'll play piano for your event. And what I loved was he sent me a personalized video of him. Like you could tell this wasn't like, oh, he sent this to, no, it was personalized to me. He talked about, the things that he'd seen on my site. And then he played a song for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, as we were talking about, the power of the internet, the power of social media, that this dude took the time to play this song for me. So thank you. I love videos. I love DMs that are videos. Just don't send me inappropriate things, but
obviously
videos and voice notes, because I think it's so lovely actually hearing someone's voice in a world where it's all text messaging. You are amazing, Susan. I'm so glad that I got to have this conversation with you. And I'm so happy for people to learn more about you, and may you continue to be successful. You truly deserve every success that's coming your way.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Sandra. This has been a joy, of course.